welcome to This Day in His Story, created by American Heritage Worldwide, a reminder that every day holds something new to learn. Did you know that in 1784, Benjamin Franklin believed that waking up earlier could save money on candles? Discover how farmers originally opposed daylight saving time because it disrupted their cow milking schedules. Learn that studies show a 2% decrease in SAT scores right after daylight saving time changes. Learn how today, only Hawaii and most of Arizona do not observe daylight saving time.
Okay, so look at your calendar. Just look right at it. Do you see it? It is looming right there on the horizon. Monday, March 2, 2026.
Oh, the day the coffee machines of the world they work overtime.
Exactly. We are just days away from that annual ritual that everyone seems to love to hate. You go to bed on a Saturday night, you wake up on Sunday, and you just feel
Robbed.
robbed. Yes. Like someone literally reached into your life, reached right into your bedroom, and stole 60 minutes of peace right out from under your pillow.
It really is the collective groan of a nation. We're all bracing ourselves to, quote-unquote, spring ahead.
Which, I mean, it always sounds so energetic and positive, doesn't it? Like springing ahead. It sounds like you're frolicking in a meadow with baby lambs or something.
Right, but in reality, it just feels like grogginess.
Grogginess, confusion, and a desperate need for a nap that you can't take because your schedule is suddenly totally wrong. And then, of course, we fall behind later in the year, which honestly just sounds like a failure.
It does have a negative ring to it.
Right. But right now, we are staring down the barrel of the loss, the missing hour. And looking at the sources you brought in for today, it really forces the question, why? Why do we actually do this to ourselves?
It is the core question. Is this disruption, this biological jet lag that we inflict on the entire population twice a year, is it actually worth it?
And that is our mission for this deep dive. We are going to peel back the layers on daylight saving time. We're going to trace this really strange ritual back to its roots, which, according to the history you've pulled, are way wilder than I expected.
Oh, absolutely.
We're talking about satirical letters, bug collectors, coal shortages, and actual world wars.
And crucially, we're going to look at the hard data. Because for decades, we've been told this is necessary. We've been told it's an efficiency thing.
Yeah.
But the modern numbers on energy, on crime, and even standardized testing, they tell a very different story.
But before we launch the deep dive bus into all of that, we have to pull over for a quick citation from the grammar police, because I honestly felt a little attacked by the fun facts sheet you included in the prep stack.
I had a feeling you might. I actually saw you highlight that specific section in red marker.
I have been saying it wrong my entire life. I always say daylight savings time with an S at the end, like a savings account. You know, I'm going to the bank to check my savings.
You and millions of other people. I mean, it is easily the most common error in this entire topic, but technically, the sources are very, very clear. It is singular. Daylight saving time.
Daylight saving time. It just feels, I don't know, it feels incomplete without the S.
Think of it as a verbal noun. You are engaging in the act of saving daylight. You aren't banking it for interest. You are saving the light for later in the day.
Okay, I will try to keep the S off of it today, but if I slip up, just give me a look. So let's unpack the history. If I'm waking up groggy next Monday, who is the specific person I should be cursing under my breath? Who actually started this?
Well, if you want to blame the very first person to float the idea, you have to go all the way back to 1784, and you have to blame one of the founding fathers, Benjamin Franklin.
Ben Franklin, like the kite and key guy, the bifocals guy?
The very same. But here is the nuance that usually gets lost in the history books when people talk about this. Franklin is often cited as the father of the concept, but his original proposal, well, it wasn't exactly a serious legislative bill. It was a joke.
Right. I was reading this article he wrote, An Economical Project. He was living in Paris at the time, right?
Correct. He was the American envoy to France. And anyone who knows Franklin knows he really loved the social scene. He wrote this satirical letter to the Journal de Paris. He basically claimed that he had made a startling discovery. He woke up at 6 a.m. accidentally, mind you, and realized the sun was already up.
Which, for a man who famously loved the nightlife and staying up late, was probably a genuine shock to his system.
Exactly. He was amazed. So he calculated that the citizens of Paris were wasting an absolute fortune on candles by sleeping while the sun was up and then burning wax specifically to see at night.
So it was an efficiency argument from the very start.
Pure economics. He crunched the numbers because he's Franklin and he literally can't help himself and claimed Paris could save 64 million pounds of wax and tallow,
Wow.
which is a massive amount of money. But the solutions he proposed, that's where you can tell he's just trolling the Parisians.
Oh, they were extreme. He didn't suggest changing the clocks, though, did he?
No, clocks weren't the target yet. He wanted to change behavior by force.
He suggested taxing every window that had shutters, which is wild. He suggested rationing candles so people literally couldn't stay up late. But my absolute favorite was the wake-up call.
The church bells.
Not just bells. He wrote that if the bells weren't enough, they should fire cannons in every street at sunrise to, quote, wake the sluggards effectually.
Can you imagine? You're trying to sleep in, maybe you had a late night out, and suddenly just artillery fire in the streets.
I mean, it would work. I would definitely be up. I might be terrified, but I'd be awake. But the point was satire, right? He was poking fun at the French for being lazy.
To an extent, yes. But the seed of the idea was planted. The logic was his famous phrase, early to bed and early to rise makes a man healthy, wealthy, and wise. He was applying that maxim to an entire city's economy. If you oblige a man to rise at 4 in the morning, he will likely go willingly to bed at 8 in the evening.
So Franklin identifies the quote-unquote waste of daylight, but he proposes cannons to fix it. He doesn't actually suggest moving the hands of the clock. So who takes it from a joke about candles to a serious proposal about time manipulation?
For that, we have to jump forward over a century. We leave Paris and head all the way down to New Zealand in 1895. Enter George Hudson.
Now, this guy was interesting. He wasn't a politician. He was a scientist, right?
He was an entomologist, a bug expert, and he worked a day job at the post office. And his motivation is honestly the most relatable part of this whole story. It wasn't about saving the natural economy. It wasn't about patriotism. It was just about his hobby.
He just wanted more time to catch bugs.
Precisely. He worked inside the post office all day. By the time he clocked out, the sun was going down, and he couldn't find the insects he wanted to study. He coveted those evening daylight hours. He was looking at the clock thinking, if only I could shift this, I could find more specimens.
So he goes to the Wellington Philosophical Society and proposes what exactly?
A time shift. But not the one we know today. Hudson went big. He proposed a 2-hour shift.
2 hours? I mean, if I feel bad losing 1 hour next week, imagine losing 2 all at once. That is intense. That is serious jet lag.
It was a very bold move. He wanted to shift the clocks 2 hours forward in October and 2 hours back in March. He presented this formal paper on seasonal time adjustment.
And how was that received? Did they think he was a genius?
They thought it was confusing and completely unnecessary. It didn't gain traction. But he wasn't the only one thinking about this. Across the globe, over in Great Britain, there was a builder named William Willett.
And Willett is important here. This is around 1907.
Right. Willett is riding his horse early in the morning in a suburb of London. The sun is up, it's beautiful out, and he notices all the houses still have their shutters closed. Everyone is asleep.
So he sees it as a waste, just like Franklin.
He literally calls his campaign the waste of daylight, which sounds almost like a heavy metal album title or a grunge band. We are the waste of daylight.
It really does. I'd listen to them.
And Willett was very passionate about the math. He argued that there were 210 additional hours of daylight available without price. He calculated that 80 minutes of extra light a day amounts to something like 9 hours and 20 minutes a week. He basically promised the British public the equivalent of a whole holiday every single week, just by shifting the clocks.
But his plan, reading the details of his proposal in the prep notes gave me a headache. It wasn't simple at all.
It was overly engineered. He was a builder, so maybe he liked structure a bit too much.
Yeah, the sources say he didn't want to just move the clock 1 hour. He wanted to do it in increments.
Yes. He proposed moving the clocks forward by 20 minutes on 4 separate Sundays in April, and then moving them back 20 minutes on 4 separate Sundays in September.
That sounds like a logistical nightmare. We have trouble remembering to change the clock once. Imagine doing it 4 weeks in a row. You'd wake up thinking, okay, is it 20 minutes fast today? Or 40? Or 60?
It would have been total chaos. You'd show up to meetings 20 minutes early, then 40 minutes early. The train schedules alone would have been impossible to manage. Imagine trying to catch a train on the 3rd Sunday of April. But beyond the confusion, Willett faced a totally different kind of opposition, a moral one.
I have found this fascinating. The idea that time is objective.
Right. There was a strong sentiment back then that God's time or sun time was the objective truth. Changing the clocks was seen by some as a literal lie. It was a deception. You were telling the world it is noon when the sun is not actually at its peak.
That is such a heavy philosophical take. We think of time as just a utility now, just numbers on our phone screen. But back then, messing with the clock was like messing with the fundamental laws of nature.
Exactly. So you have Franklin with his cannons, Hudson with his bugs, and Willett with his 20-minute intervals. They all pitched it. But here's the thing. None of them actually got the laws passed during peacetime.
Right, because the arguments about bugs and golf and long walks just weren't enough. It wasn't bug collecting that changed the world, it was war.
Sadly, yes. It took a global conflict to turn these theories into reality.
This connects back to the coal issue, right? We sort of circle back to Franklin's original energy argument.
Precisely. When World War I broke out, energy conservation stopped being about saving pennies on candles and became a matter of national survival. You needed coal for the war machine. You needed it for factories, for transport. You couldn't waste it on lighting homes if you could use sunlight instead.
So who blinked first? Who actually adopted it?
It was actually Germany, Imperial Germany at that time, in 1916.
Wow, 1916.
Yes. To conserve coal, they mandated that clocks be put ahead 1 hour.
And once Germany did it, everyone else just had to follow suit.
It created a domino effect. You can't let the enemy have an efficiency advantage. If they are saving coal, you need to save coal. Great Britain adopted it weeks later. And then the United States followed with the Standard Time Act of 1918.
And the U.S. really sold it to the public, didn't they? The sources mention this incredible propaganda.
The marketing machine was in full swing. This wasn't presented as a choice. It was presented as a patriotic duty.
There's this postcard description in the notes that I wish we could project for the listeners right now. It's Uncle Sam. And he's holding a garden hoe in one hand and a rifle in the other.
It's a very striking image.
And he's reaching out and turning back the hands of a pocket watch.
It really drives home the message. Daylight saving time wasn't about leisure or catching bugs anymore. It was about the war effort. It was patriotic. The garden hoe implies growing your own food victory gardens, and the rifle implies the front lines. The watch is the tool that binds the farmer and the soldier together.
So we adopt it for WWI. It's a wartime measure. The war ends. We use it again in WWII. But then what happened? Because I recall reading that between the wars and especially after WWII, there was a period of total chaos.
Chaos is honestly the best word for it. It was the Wild West of timekeeping. After the wars, the federal mandate expired. It wasn't the law of the land anymore. But some cities liked it, some states liked it, others hated it.
So it was just up to local choice?
Completely. There was no standard. You could literally take a bus ride of 35 miles and go through 7 different time changes.
No way. 7 times in 35 miles.
Seriously. There is a famous example of a bus route from Moundsville, West Virginia to Steubenville, Ohio. It's not a long trip. But because different towns observed different times, the passengers and the driver had to adjust their watches 7 times in less than an hour.
That sounds absolutely maddening and bad for business.
Terrible for business, terrible for train schedules. And think about television broadcasting, which was just becoming a huge thing. How do you schedule a live show when half the country is an hour behind the other half, but only in certain counties?
Yeah.
Finally, the industry's had enough. They lobbied hard for standardization.
And that gives us the Uniform Time Act of 1966.
Correct. This act tried to herd the cats. It set the rules. It basically said, if you're going to observe daylight saving time, here's when it starts and here's when it ends. But, and this is a big but, it allowed states to exempt themselves entirely if they wanted to.
Which explains why if you fly to Arizona or Hawaii today, you don't have to worry about this.
Correct. They are the famous holdouts. Hawaii is close enough to the equator that the daylight doesn't change much year-round, so for them it's pointless. And Arizona, they argued they have enough heat. They didn't want the blazing sun lingering until 9:00 p.m. in the summer, so they opted out.
But for the rest of us, the schedule kept shifting anyway. The current one, the one we are about to experience next week, isn't even the 1966 schedule.
No, it was expanded again, the Energy Policy Act of 2007. That gave us the current spring forward on the second Sunday in March and fall back on the second Sunday in November. It effectively extended DST by about 4 weeks compared to the old schedule.
And the selling point in 2007 was the exact same as 1918, energy conservation.
That was the headline, Save Energy. That has been the drumbeat for over 100 years.
Okay, so that brings us to the present day. We know the history, satire, bugs, war, coal, and a bus ride through 7 time zones. But now we have to ask the big question, the reality check. does it actually work?
This is where the narrative gets complicated, and honestly, a little disappointing.
Because the whole selling point from Franklin to the World Wars to 2007 was saving energy, saving candle, saving coal, saving electricity. So, surely, with all our modern technology, it saves electricity, right?
You would think so. Conventional wisdom says yes, more sun means fewer lights, but the actual data says no.
Lay it on us.
There was a significant study from the University of California at Santa Barbara. They looked at the numbers specifically around the time change in Indiana, which is a great case study because parts of the state adopted it late. And they found that daylight saving time actually increases electricity consumption by 1 to 4%.
Wait, it increases it. That is the exact opposite of the goal. How is that even possible?
Think about how we live now compared to Franklin's time. Franklin worried about candles. We worry about air conditioning.
Ah, the AC.
Exactly. If you extend the daylight into the evening, people are up and active. They are home. It's still warm out, often the hottest part of the day lingering into the evening. So they're inside running the AC. They're watching TV. They're running computers. The study points out that the demand for cooling and heating actually outweighs the savings from not turning on a few light bulbs.
That makes total sense when you think about it. LED bulbs cost pennies to run, but an air conditioner, that drains the grid. So we are disrupting our sleep schedules to quote-unquote save energy, but we are actually paying more for electricity. That is frustrating.
It is definitely ironic. But the consequences go beyond just the electric bill. This is where the deep dive gets a little concerning for parents and students.
Oh, I saw this stat in the source material. This one hurt to read.
The SAT scores?
Yeah. Researchers found a correlation. What was the exact drop?
They found a 2% decrease in SAT scores when the tests were administered shortly after the switch to daylight saving time.
I want you to really think about that. A 2% drop. That sounds small on paper, but in the world of competitive college admissions, that is massive. That could easily be the difference between getting into your top choice university or being waitlisted.
And it's purely because the test happened to fall right after we messed with everyone's circadian rhythms.
It makes complete sense, though. I mean, I functioned at about 50% capacity that Monday after the change. Asking a high schooler who is already notoriously sleep-deprived to take the most important test of their life while experiencing social jet lag, that's rough.
It highlights the biological cost. We aren't machines. You can't just turn a dial and expect the human body to adjust instantly. The sleep loss accumulates.
Now, to be fair to the argument, are there any benefits? Or is it all just higher electric bills and lower test scores?
Well, there's the crime argument. This is the one stat that proponents usually cling to. Some experts insist that the extra hour of daylight in the evening actually reduces crime.
Because criminals prefer the dark.
Generally, yes. Robbery rates, specifically. If people are commuting home in daylight or out walking their dogs in daylight, there is theoretically less opportunity for muggings or vehicle theft. So that is a potential check in the pro column. Safer streets in the early evening.
Okay, so maybe safer streets. But I really want to talk about the farmers, because I feel like there is this massive myth that daylight saving time was invented for farmers. I hear that all the time. Oh, we do it for the farmers.
That is arguably the biggest myth in American history regarding time. It persists everywhere. But in reality, the farmers originally opposed daylight saving time. They were the loudest voices against it.
They hated it.
They did. And it comes back to biology again. Think about the nature of farming. Cows do not wear watches.
Exactly. A cow needs to be milked when it needs to be milked.
Right. The sun dictates the dew on the crops. You can't harvest grain if it's wet with morning dew, regardless of what the clock on the wall says. The animals dictate the feeding schedule. The sources mentioned that farmers strongly objected to having to milk cows in the dark just to meet the new schedule of the milk trucks or the urban markets.
It disrupted their entire supply chain.
It did. The drive for DST was largely for the urban population. The source had that great line about who actually benefits.
Yes, it mentions city dwellers enjoying a daylight motor ride home at 8 p.m.
Exactly. It was about leisure for the office worker. It was about getting off work and having time to play baseball or go for a drive. The farmer, who works by the sun anyway, just found the clock change to be a massive nuisance that put them completely out of sync with the rest of society.
So let's look at the scoreboard here. Farmers hate it. Students score lower. We are paying more for electricity. It disrupts our sleep. How does the general public feel about it now?
The tide is definitely turning. A Rasmussen poll from 2014, which is cited in our source, found that a growing number of Americans do not think daylight saving time is worth the hassle anymore.
And that was back in 2014. I feel like if you took that exact same poll today, in 2026, the numbers would be even higher.
It's very likely. We are much more aware of sleep hygiene now. We are more aware of health data. When you stack up the hassle against the supposed benefits, the math just doesn't seem to work out for a lot of people.
So let's recap the mission here. We started with the pain of losing an hour. We found out it started with Parisian satire and bug collecting in New Zealand.
Don't forget the cannons.
The cannons, yes. I will never forget the cannons. Then it got deadly serious because of a world war and a coal shortage. And now, over 100 years later, we are stuck with a system that might actually be costing us money and brain power.
That is a pretty accurate summary. What started as a way to save candles has become a twice-a-year societal jet lag that we just can't seem to shake.
It really makes you wonder why we hold on to it so tightly. Is it just inertia, just because we've always done it?
That's often how these things work. Institutional inertia is a powerful force. It takes a lot of effort to change a law that has been ingrained since WWI. But looking at the sources, it challenges us to ask a personal question. Is this actually a benefit to you? Not to the electric company, not to the retail stores, but to you.
That's a really great question for the listener. When you change that clock next week, ask yourself, does this actually make my life better? Do I use that extra evening hour for a daylight motor ride or a bug hunt? Or am I just tired?
And it connects to a deeper thought about our relationship with time itself.
Yeah, the source material ended with a really thoughtful reference that I think is worth chewing on. It's from the scriptures, Ecclesiastes 3.1.
To everything there is a season, and a time to every purpose under the heaven.
It's a reminder that nature has its own rhythm. The seasons change, the sun rises and sets. It happens whether we touch the clock or not.
And perhaps our attempt to manipulate time via clocks, to force the sun to align with our office hours, is a bit of a fight against those natural seasons. We are trying to engineer something that is fundamentally out of our control.
We are trying to bend nature to our schedule instead of adapting our schedule to nature.
Precisely. And maybe the grogginess you feel on Monday is just nature pushing back a little bit.
Well, whether you love the extra sunlight or hate the lost sleep, Monday, March 2nd is coming. Thank you for joining us for this day in His story. May the lessons of yesterday inspire you to see God's hand today and to play your part in His story now. For more faith-based learning, visit ahsworldwide.org, the homeschool for faith and family.